Wholeness and welcome. This is Josh Dippold of integratingpresence.com. And today I have Timothy Stuetz with me. Timothy, how's it going?
Oh, having a fantastic day so far, Josh.
Well, I could imagine so. It also happens to be your birthday, right?
It is
Well,
72 years on this beautiful planet
well,
today.
happy 72nd. And when Timothy was reaching out, he said, "Well, I'm booking on my birthday." And I said, "Wow, that's amazing that you want to spend time with me on your birthday, even the short amount of time we have today. It's a pleasure and an honor." So, Timothy, why don't you tell people who you are and what you do instead of me, like I usually say, me reading a bio, right?
Well, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I do.
Hey, I'd probably answer the same way too, right?
I did basically at this point. I love connecting people with their souls. When I graduated from college, I was a certified public accountant, spent many years in the business field, and got a message one day when I woke up in the morning that if Hershey's could make kisses, I could make chocolate French kisses. And so I set out to open up my own chocolate shop. And it was actually in that chocolate shop that I got a box delivered to me one day that I didn't order. And I opened it up because the driver wouldn't take it back. And it was full of little teddy bears. And so being a CPA and loving Hardy Boy books when I was a kid and mystery books, I found out who owned the bears and how they got to me and how they got in the country illegally. And the people gave me the bears, the ones that owned them. And I carried one in my car with me. And one day, after about 2 weeks of this little bear riding shotgun, I picked it up and said, "Who are you?" And surprisingly, I heard Poet Bear. And that made sense to me because I wrote love poetry, I wrote philosophical poetry. So I decided to combine my poetry in a little book with the teddy bear in a box and got the whole package together. My mom took one look at it and she said, "Man, you blew it. That should have been a children's book." And I said, "Well, that's love poetry. That's philosophical. It's heavy stuff. It's not for kids, about kids." But my mom knew me on deep levels. And 6 months later, the first idea of a children's book popped into my head. And it's now 88 children's books later. So I never set out to write children's books, but that's literally what's happened. And then, in the process of moving from being a CPA to a chocolatier to writing children's books, I also um, connected more in on my spirituality and learned Reiki and multiple forms of Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation, and have taught those for 40 years, as well as writing the children's books and developing courses and services for children and families around the world.
Well, very cool. It's interesting how I know some of the greatest things in my life have happened that were beyond my wildest dreams. Like I could have planned years for them and set goals and even my imagination for it. And life just turned out to be even 10 times, 20 times, who knows how many times more fantastic and amazing that I could have never seemed to dream up with. And life has so many things in store for us. I'm not saying don't stop dreaming, don't stop imagining, don't stop planning and making goals, but yeah, it's just amazing how life can be sometimes. Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
dream and have visions, and then
mhm.
just be open and in the flow of the moment and allow those dreams and visions to come into being as God wants them to come into being.
That's right, because there's that old joke, how do you make God laugh? You tell him your plans, right? So,
Exactly.
so yes, this and it's interesting in an accountant too, because this reminds me of I followed a spiritual community called Energetic Synthesis for a while, and the gal who runs that, when she was still in the base program or the matrix, she was an accountant, and it's just so wild what a transformation, huh, from doing accounting to this type of work. It just blows my mind sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I found in teaching people Tai Chi, especially in Qigong and meditation, I've actually found that professionals that are in the business world, okay, or in the sports world, or anything where people have had to focus really intently, no matter what their profession was, it was an easier move to them to reconnect with their spirituality, because they just used that focus they used in business or whatever they were doing and turned it inside of themselves. Whereas people that really don't have much of a focus on anything, I found that it's real hard for them to stick with anything they find. And so they really don't get the deep benefits they could get in developing a practice on a regular basis.
I'm reminded now, or what's coming to me now is, yeah, this is the concentration practices, or I don't really, it's samatha in Buddhist type practices that lead to jhana or dhyana, these absorption states, these deep, profound concentration states, or a gathering, a unifying of mind. And yeah, now it makes sense that if maybe they've had these practices in past lives or something, and now they were drawn to these professions where they're really good at concentration and it demands concentration. But then when they start to wake up again, maybe a little bit, then they realize, oh, hey, there's a little bit more beyond that, right? And they have a natural tendency. It's a beautiful way to put it. And actually, the reason I asked Timothy on, or when he sought out me, I was going to ask about children's meditation in general, since I do meditation too. But before we get to that, I wanted to just pick up on the Qigong and things. And I just wanted to share that I learned this. It's similar to Qi practices called Yi Jin Jing, and I think it's like a preliminary to some of the kung fu practices, even though I've never taken a martial arts course. But it's this really brief Qi set of Qi exercises that I think some people translate it as muscle or ligament changing exercise, or some people even fascia changing exercise. I know my Achilles heel, it softened on like the first 2 or 3 times I ever did it. It was pretty amazing. And it's just like there's such a profound benefit for such a small amount of time investment in this too. Yes, it's really, I noticed so many different things like increased energy, circulation, all these different types of strength as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. So
I practiced and taught yoga for many years before finding Tai Chi and Qigong. And I find that those practices are much easier to learn, especially after you're 30, 35 years old. And it's hard to put your body in positions in yoga and hold positions. And especially in the West, we're used to moving. So Qigong and Tai Chi, where there's a little more action, it's easier for Westerners to adapt to, and yeah, it flows the energy so much stronger than I ever found in yoga. And
yes,
like you said, just for a little bit of effort, you get a whole lot of benefits.
it
And
is. It really is, because I started off, for years and had a weekly yoga practice, and it was and I think it does bring a lot of discipline, and it's really strenuous. It can be, especially holding some poses and going deeper into some poses and things like this. And it did help my sitting practice. But yeah, during the lockdowns, I quit it completely because I would only go with a teacher, And so I started doing these the Qigong, more Qigong style things, and I can totally attest to that as well. And it's interesting combining combining the two sometimes too, maybe not in one session or whatever, but yeah, they're really beneficial practices. I encourage anybody. I mean, here you are on a computer. If you're listening to this or watching this, just Google Qigong, Tai Chi, Yi Jin Jing. So in a past co-host I had, he does this every week on Insight Timer, his Qi exercises. But the Tai Chi, I found, to me, I don't do it because I wonder if it's based more on martial arts for me, and then it's almost like a dance, like this really complex dance move I see almost, and I'm really in awe of it, and really respect the people that can do these really long sequences from memory, and just like an art form and a dance form. It's pretty amazing. Yep.
yep, you memorize one little piece and then you add another little piece and you keep bringing it into your practice. And
The
I
very
actually,
first, go ahead.
the first form I actually learned was developed by a Westerner, because he found that most Westerners could not learn 108 movements, and they didn't have the discipline to do that. So he created a short form using the principles of Tai Chi, which is basically just shifting your weight with the hand movements. And it's literally the shifting of the weight between the legs that generates the energy, and the hands literally shape the energy. So just rocking back and forth or shifting your weight side to side and integrating some slow hand movements and focusing below the navel while you're moving, those three simple things create such an powerful, energetic flow. It's amazing. And, Tai Chi is a form of Qigong, and there's thousands and thousands of forms of Qigong.
That's it's
I
really
had to stop learning. I had to stop taking forms because you have to practice them. And I got to about 13 or 14. It's like, no, I can't practice all these every day.
it's like trying to find out all the designer drugs out there. They tweak them just a little bit, right? But okay, so could you name drop him for people that are interested? I'm definitely interested. This Westerner.
He's no longer alive, but the form he created was called Tai Chi Cha, CHIH. And it's basically 19 simple movements in a standing posture. You can do a practice in 20 minutes.
Very, very cool. Check.
But it's really easy to learn. And you mentioned Qigong and yoga. I actually created a form of Qigong and yoga where you do a movement of Qigong and you take that and flow it into a yoga pose afterwards. And so it's really powerful because you've stirred up the energy, you've done the movement, and then you go into a holding pose where you can just literally melt into all of that energy. And
Very cool. Did you come up with a
yeah.
name for it, and where can people see it demonstrated or learn more about it? Is there?
Well, I never even recorded a
Ah,
video on that. I taught it a couple times at a community college, and
okay.
that's about it. But I think I just called it Tai Chi Yoga.
Yeah. Well, maybe there might be an incentive now to throw up a little video, right? If anyone's
Yeah.
interested. Well, cool. It sounds, because I know the Tai Chi that I was learning one time, just the first opening movements. I mean, I felt at the time, maybe I was over intimidated. I felt I could practice for months on end and still not be confident in just that few opening moves over and over. That's how kind of complex and where I could see that to get any kind of mastery at all, or any kind of confidence at all for me, it would take so much practice. But I guess people back before, Netflix and watching YouTube videos like this, they had more time to do that. No, I don't know. But yeah, it was just a lot of my own respect for that. Where the Qigong, I don't seem so intimidated because it seems more natural and flowing and not trying to perfect it as an art form, even though of course we can do Tai Chi without having to, do it so perfectly or anything like this, right? But
Yeah, just a couple of movements. And you're right, whether it's Qigong or Tai Chi or yoga, those practices, when you devote yourself to them, they really teach you. So there's nuances that you pay. You can do the same pose, you can do the same movement over and over for years, and then it's all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, just doing this one little thing that all of a sudden I did differently shifted things so
yes,
amazingly. Or you know, the real purpose of those is not only the physical health, but to connect us spiritually, connect us with our inner selves, quiet the mind, and
yeah, in touch with the body.
Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong, they do all that. They integrate mind, body, spirit, heart, everything into one.
And this is and the more energetically sensitive we become and the more tuned into subtle energies, the more little changes making all the difference in the world, right? And it's just profound to think for me that to realize that these stories I hear of, a lot of these asanas came out of those that went into meditation, and they just kind of felt naturally, or quote unquote naturally, not compelled so much, is that's just what the body kind of felt like it needed then, right? So they can come out of these things and just kind of go into these postures naturally because that's what the body was asking for, if I'm getting that right. But yeah.
Yeah, I've been in a few states of awareness that I just allowed my body to do what it wanted, and I was in such relaxed states that I got into poses that I couldn't even believe I was in. but it was just listening inside and getting very relaxed, and then just allowing the body to do what it wants. And I remember one yoga practice. This I was bent over doing a forward stretch, and I literally heard Mother Mary say, "Give me your body." And so I did. I turned it over to her. And the next thing I knew, I was doing a double somersault flip with my back landing against the wall.
Wow.
And yeah, that's what I was saying. And it was a shock, and not so much pain, but a shock. And I said, "What was that?" It's like you say, "Give me your body." And I did, and you throw me up against a wall. Um, and what I heard back was, what you would have experienced karmically had you not surrendered would have been much worse. That was literally the energy that was needed to burst something that would have come along in the future that you really didn't need to experience if you just surrendered.
Well, I know, especially in yoga with some of the kind of more passive poses, and to go deeper and deeper, surrender is necessary. And I've noticed that I haven't practiced in a couple of years, but from drawing on my past practice, a lot of the times the inability to go deeper into poses comes from fear. There's kind of like this deep unconscious fear that I'm not going to be okay if I go too far, if I go deep. And that's the classic advice in yoga, right? Know the edge and go right to the edge, but don't go over the edge. And this notion about the body, from the body itself, I feel this goes in healing as well. So we can tune into different areas of the body and ask the body what it needs. What does it need? Not for me doing anything, but what is that part of the body asking that it needs to heal? And I guess some of the other healing professions can operate like that too. Instead of it's me healing on someone else, tuning into that part that needs attention and asking because it has the intelligence. There's just something going on that's not being met or addressed a lot of times.
Right. Once I found, just like you, once I asked the question, the answer comes in some way. And whether it's the body actually responding and you hearing it in your head, or you get a phone call and all of a sudden somebody says something to you and it's like, "Oh, that's the answer," or you hear it on a radio station or a video. It's like the answer comes, and we just have to listen to it. And
And this
that
opens.
body, it might need something physical, it just might need a mental shift. Now, at one point, my body started to die, literally, when I was in my early 30s, and doctors couldn't find anything that was wrong, but it was literally shutting down. And it was my first Reiki treatment that I got because I knew I needed something, and I'd never had a massage. And I tried to get massages, and people lost their appointment books. They didn't call me back, and it was like a conspiracy, but it led me to Reiki. And I really saw in my first Reiki treatment, which was so beautiful. I said I wanted to die like this when I got done. But I saw that as a child, when things didn't go the way that I thought they should go, underneath my breath, I was saying, "I want to die. I want to die." And once we repeat a few things like that subconsciously, our subconscious just takes over. So for the rest of my life, anytime something wasn't going right, the subconscious is saying, "I want to die." Well, my body eventually said, "Okay, I've heard that for 30 some years. Let's do this." And the minute I realized that and switched it, my body got better immediately.
This is these kind of breakthroughs and realizations for me happen time and time again in meditation. And even if they don't happen in the moment of meditation, sometimes right when I come out of it. But also they say, it reminds me of this phrase, enlightenment is an accident and meditation makes us more accident prone. So even if we're not getting direct insights through meditation, it seems to set the stage and the amount of space available and clearing things out of the way for these things to come through, and these kind of messages. And this opens the doors to synchronicity too, where it's not just with questions and answers, it's just all these things in our lives kind of matching up, or seeing the significance or interrelationship or causes and conditions even behind how things are linked together. Yeah.
Yeah, a few years ago, I met this lady who was an educator, and in talking to her and getting to meet her, she said that every year for Christmas, she gave her nephew, for the 12 days of Christmas, she gave him a book. And I just thought, and then on the 12th day, he got this huge gift of books. And I thought, God, that is such an incredible thing. And it's like, I wanted to write a story about it. And I have an outline board. So I had another story that I had written down that I wanted to do was on virtues. And it had been on the drawing board for years. And then suddenly, 3 days before Christmas, 2 years ago, I was meditating, and all of a sudden the idea popped into my head is how to combine her story about her nephew with virtues. And I came up with the 13th day, on the 13th day of Christmas, got up out of meditation, and literally within 4 hours, I had a complete story, completely rhyming in poetry, which blew me away. I mean, totally, that could flow through so quickly. And then my graphic artist was actually able to do a graphic for me in 2 hours, which he's never done. So I had a complete package together within a day that I could put out for Christmas.
Sounds like the gas pedal was stepped on.
Synchronicity, you know?
It is, yes. And so this is a good segue to talking about some of your children's books. And well, just give maybe just picking up on that, what were some of these virtues? Which ones kind of stand out for you? And then we can talk more about just the children's books in general.
Well, that one was just going through the virtues of kindliness and love and compassion and courage, whatever the 12 main virtues are. So I was able to take those, and then on the 13th, weave in one about loving self and loving God and loving all of humanity.
This reminds me too of these stories I hear where people in dreams, they'll hear like a beautiful piece of music and they'll wake up and then just go right to the piano and play the entire thing from memory, right? Some of these famous pieces of music, maybe like angelic, maybe they're hearing things in the angelic realms or something like this, and they sit down and just sit down and they have the whole thing written. It's same way with regular songs, even paintings, works of arts, all this stuff is reported from things like that as well.
Yeah, sometimes I get complete stories in my head like that, like a composition. I'll get the whole thing and I just have to sit down and start writing it. And other times I'll get a title and I'll sit down and start writing, not knowing where it's going to go, which amazes me. I just feel like I'm a conduit for these stories. So even when I go back and read everything that I've ever written, it amazes me because, like, wow, did I write that?
I hear people.
And it's opened up my imagination. It's opened up my consciousness. I even wrote a story backwards one time. I had an idea for a story and they started writing at the ending and went back to the beginning. It's like, wow, this is pretty cool.
I love the creative processes, because I ask artists about this when I talk, especially musicians too. It's like, well, do you have the music first and then come back with the lyrics, or do you do the lyrics and then put music to it, or does it all come together by itself? And then some people say, well, I only get pieces here and there, and then over years it might come together, or it might come together real quickly, or it might come together systematically. To me, this whole artistic process just speaks to kind of the greater mysteries of life, and that what we think we are and what kind of control and agency we have. Yeah, there's some of that, maybe, or seemingly anyway, but there just seems to things beyond our understanding, or current understanding of how these type of things work. Yeah, for a lot of people.
Yeah, me too. It's just it's opening to receive that no matter where it is. And sometimes it takes just somebody saying something that opens up our consciousness and all of a sudden we can experience life in a completely different way.
Yep.
I mean, when I was being trained as a Reiki master, I'd been to a 2-week retreat, and on the day I was initiated, we're all sitting out on this dock. There's about 30 of us, and all ages, little kids, senior citizens, and somebody that had been in the class with me all of a sudden says, "Wow, look at those 2 hawks flying up in the sky, and look at the energy field they fly in." And I was pretty open at that time, but I thought, this lady's lost it, you know? She's just lost it. And then everybody on that dock, 30 some of us, looked up, and because she had said it, we could literally see that those hawks were flying in a circle of energy. It's like when you're looking through a camera and you've had that circle in there, that's what they fly in. These soaring birds just float in this bubble of energy, and it's so incredibly beautiful. And the small birds too, it's just harder to see because they're moving so fast. But it was just her making that statement that opened everybody's consciousness up to be able to see what's really there, which totally blew me away.
Isn't it wild? It reminds me of this Shaktipat, I think it's called, where some of these masters can allegedly give temporarily empowerments. So some of their students or whoever they empower can see and experience the same things they are. And this is I don't normally talk about this, but it's kind of like the notion maybe of seeing auras around folks. I mean, I don't normally see that. Sometimes with certain individuals, especially on video, if they, I can see like an outline, a slight outline around them. Sometimes it's a colored, sometimes it's clear, but it reminds me of kind of seeing gasoline or in this, in a puddle, or no, actually the heat on a blacktop road. Right. And we can see this kind of heat wavering. So anytime something gets really hot, you can kind of see like the heat wave, and it's a little bit of that. But the other things I wanted to pick up on here, the open-mindedness, it's the same way. So I think it's actually quite ignorant if someone is not, if they don't know for sure they can prove what somebody else says is not the case, then it shows their ignorance that they won't even entertain the notion of, well, and until I can disprove it, then I have to be kind of open-minded about it to investigate it for myself, right? So yes, and of course, we have all this conditioning, or some people have conditioning to make them see the world and think about the world in certain ways, but until anyone can prove otherwise without a certainty of a doubt, I just don't see it very wise for them to just write it off without investigation, right? So and that's one of the biggest assets I think I have is open-mindedness as well. Yep.
And we're all going to have different experiences. So when anybody starts a Tai Chi, yoga, meditation experience, they're going to have the experiences they need to open them up, which isn't necessarily, there might be some common experiences that we can all experience, but it's such an individual practice because we all need our own stuff cleared out in different ways. So God and meditation and yoga, magically finds the secret ingredients that we need. So that, that kind of goes back to that Shaktipat. Like once we tune into a spiritual practice, and even if we're just asking God for help, all of a sudden the whole universe starts to conspiring to give us the answers we need in the way that we need it. I've always said that I've needed to be hit over the head with 2x4s over and over again and have these powerful experiences that I've had, and I feel very blessed. But that's what I've needed to wake me up and to expand my consciousness. Even if it was, my daughter was hit by a car at one point in time on a bicycle, and she was in a coma. And like the third day she was in the coma, I was out walking around the neighborhood just to clear my head. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I heard her say, "Look, Daddy." And I saw this 12-year-old girl walking towards me, which was, my daughter was about 11 at the time. The minute I saw that girl, I hear my daughter say, "Look, Daddy, I'm the sky. Look, Daddy, I'm the trees. Look, Daddy, I'm this little girl coming towards you. I'm everywhere, Daddy." And I thought, okay, I've got to expand my consciousness in order to embrace where my daughter's at right now, even though her body's in a coma. She's in expanded state that's far beyond where I am. So it's like, okay, I'm going to open up to this and see where this takes me.
It's really profound, and you know why we don't wish harm on anyone. It reminds me of this Tibetan kind of practice or saying that they're grateful for every amount of stress and suffering they have, because it's an opportunity then to see it and end it, right? And these expanded states of consciousness can help us see the world in better ways to further us to end these things in life, right? Or just to make life better in general. Though, okay, so we don't have much time left here. I think we can get to this part with children's meditation. I know I have a niece and nephew, and it's I was going about trying to wonder about how I should teach them. I've heard some advice that kids shouldn't do kind of traditional formal meditation for more minutes than their age, which I can see. Like in starting at 5 years old, maybe just 5 minutes would be okay. But I never got around to it. Now I have a friends, they're a couple, and they have two small children, and they ask me for, kind of advice or about meditation for them, and they're getting to the, past the 5 year mark soon here. And so yeah, so any kind of thoughts or advice or words of wisdom or how you teach it and all these types of things. So
Well, for children, it's finding what resonates with them at their particular age, like you said.
mhm.
Like I like the 5 animal frolics in Qigong. So I actually had Disney quality costumes made and got in costume and do a Qigong practice for kids that they can follow along when I'm in animal costumes, because the segments are short, nothing's more than 4 minutes. So they can do a movement for 4 minutes, focus, and then rest afterwards. And that gives them something active to do. They're just not sitting. It's like trying to get a kid to sit and just say meditate. Yeah, right. So you find something, you find something that relates to them. I taught my daughter to focus below her navel when she was doing exercises and gym practices, and she came back to me and said, God, I have so much more balance. So it's literally just giving them little tools to focus their mind. They don't have to sit quietly to do that.
Beautiful. Timothy, I think we ought to start wrapping it up here. Tell people where they can find you, what kind of projects you have going on currently, any place you would like to draw people's attention, and anything else you'd like to leave the audience with.
Oh, thank you. Well, then go to www.timothystuetz.com, and if they put /freebies, I have a page where there's freebies for every age. There's guided meditations for adults and children. There's fairy tales. There's a sample of some of the courses. There's some music. There's something there for everybody. And then I just completed putting together a training academy for teenagers, because I want to give teenagers the ability to go out into the world when they're 18 years old and be able to teach Qigong, yoga, meditation. And, instead of being a mechanic or a plumber, they can actually, by the time they're 18, have done enough practices and study to go out into the world and share these to stimulate the energy and the peace and the love and the bliss in everybody. And also developed a book club for parents and children, where they get all of my stories plus a live story time every month and a creative book project every month. So those are my main focus right now, is families and children, and giving them the tools to make this world and themselves much more empowered, peaceful, blissful, and loving.
Well, beautiful, Timothy. So Stutz is spelled Stuetz.
Yes.
Yes, and it's just his name.com. And with that, we'll wrap this up. May you all find your highest inspiration and great meditation practices, and all kinds of optimal creativity for yourselves, for your loved ones, and for all beings everywhere. May all beings everywhere realize awakening and be free.
Yes, so beautiful.
All right. Thanks for joining.